Hello and welcome to Insight. Today we have with us Ankit Bhuptani. Ankit is a well-known human rights advocate as well as a corporate social responsibility professional. He has over 10 years of experience in the DEI space, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Ankit has been widely recognized for his work with community members from different backgrounds, but his focus remains on the LGBTQIA plus community and their issues. Ankit has also been a key organizing member of the Pride Parade in Mumbai. Hello and welcome to Insight, Ankit. It is such a pleasure to have you in Delhi. It seems to be that you're so busy that I'm meeting you after what, 6 months?
Yes, it's more than 6 months, I think. But namaste, Jai Hind to everybody, and Jai Hind to you, Rami. Pleasure to be here.
I know. Thank you so much. Last time I heard you, we were on a panel together. I was moderating it, and you very eloquently put through such complex thoughts relating to the issues around homosexuality in India, also the LGBTQIA plus communities. So really, it's a pleasure for me to delve into this topic with you. Let me begin by asking you, you yourself as a homosexual man, when you came out, how was it? How did family, friends react to it? Was it a big thing or was it not?
Well, I came out when the Supreme Court of India gave its negative judgment. So I came out on the 11th December 2013. I still remember that date. In sociology, people say that there are stages and circles of coming out. You come out to yourself first, then you come out to your, say, cousin or sibling whom you are more close to, then you come out to your parents, then you come out to the extended family, then you come out to the whole world, right? So they say that there are 7 to 8 circles of coming out. However, my coming out journey was directly from the outer circle. So I was not out a day before, and I came out on a national television on the day of Supreme Court's negative judgment on IPC 377, which criminalized homosexual act in India before the read down of it in 2018. So I came out directly on a national television, so suddenly everybody got to know about it. Their reaction, well, many of my friends were fine with it. There were people who just ignored it, including my family. So for my family, it was never a conversation with me. So there are parts of our life which family do not want to discuss. This is one of it. So is it acceptance or rejection? I say I don't have an answer to it. It's a gray. I'm so out publicly about my gender identity orientation. I talk about LGBT rights very proudly in India. At the same time, my family has never questioned me on what am I doing, why am I doing this, am I gay. That kind of conversation never happened in my family. Yet, the typical marriage pressure once you cross 23, 24, 25 also did not happen at my home. Couple of times my parents asked me, did you want to get married to a girl? I said, no, I'm not interested because I don't have interest in girls. And that was it. So, I think it's a silent acceptance if I want to look at it positively.
Well, I think that's a great way to look at it because, we can't expect everybody to react in an ideal way that is ideal to us, So I'm glad you look at all the positive sides. But, on the other side, do you think that general society, and not pertaining just to your family, but generally society needs to have certain changes towards its acceptance to LGBT communities? Or it's a natural process?
I think the answer to that question is it is a natural and evolving process. So when I came out in 2013, things were not as great and positive as it is in 2023, right? And things were really not this great when a generation before me from queer community came out. So people like Ashok Rao Kavi, when they came out, or Lakshmi Narayan Tripathi when she came out as a trans person or as a gay man, things were really, really difficult. It was not that difficult for me. And today if you see on social media, in any of the colleges, there are people who are 17, 18 proudly talking about their diverse gender identity and orientation and then they are being accepted. So when I look at a society on a macro level currently, Rami, I feel that the trajectory of acceptance of LGBT community not just in India but globally, is on the rise. But we also need to be mindful that when an acceptance goes towards the higher trajectory, the homophobia and the people who reject that idea will also come out of the closet. So as LGBT community is coming out of a closet, we are also seeing the hateful reaction by certain section of the same society also coming out of closet, and that is the conversation we are living in. But majoritarily, I see India of today is much more progressive and accepting.
You know, I'll come to this question. It's an interesting point you brought up about acceptance and the hatred, all of it coming together, you know, and that itself has so many nuances within it. But I'll come to that question later. You also said that, you know, kids as young as 17 years of age, or, you know, maybe even younger, are very proudly coming out and, you know, accepting who they are. Do you think that the education system needs to play a role, or already has a role, or needs to stay away from these debates? One. But the second part of this question, Ankit, I'd like to ask is, you know, how would you assess the awareness of children that young? You know, we've heard this spoken about quite a few times, you know, the counter argument being, you know, they're so young, what would they know? Right. You know, how would you address these two things?
Your first question, that should education system talk about it? The answer to that question, in my personal opinion, is absolute big yes. The only question is, how do we talk about it? To what age group are we talking about, and is it age appropriate or not? Looking back at my own personal life, from my lived reality, I really wish that somebody would have told me when I was discovering myself being different. I'm deliberately using the English word discover here. That means something which always existed and you discover it at a certain age because of certain situation in your life. So I discovered myself being different at the age of 15, and I thought that there's nobody like me in the whole world. Again, I come from a lower middle class family. I studied in Gujarati medium school till my 10th grade. So the avenues of external world was extremely limited in my life. My worldview was limited to my school and again my home. Sometimes I joke about it that till my last examination of 10th grade, my mom used to come to pick me up from the school, take me back to home, again next day take me back to the school. I had no idea what was happening in the back benches because I was always a good student who will always sit on the first bench, outer side of the first bench, just in front of the teacher. I was always a class monitor, I was always the first ranker. With all of this thing, my worldview unfortunately became limited because my worldview was just the school library. I had read all the books in the school library. However, not even a single book talked about sex. Forget about talking about gender, right? So my whole world was limited. Second, because when I was growing, our resources were limited. The cable TV was a faraway dream. The only two entertainment channels at that time which was available at my home was DD1 and DD2. That is also like, you know, we used to run to the balcony, to the terrace, and that aluminum antenna used to be there, and we used to move it left and right and shout back that, oh, is there a signal now? And yes, we could watch Shaktiman on Sunday or a Chitrahar on a weekend, right? Or biopic movies on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, one hour. So the whole world was limited. I had no access to the English literature, English music, Western entertainment, where maybe some kind of integration towards LGBT identity would be given. So when I discovered myself being different, I thought I'm only one in the whole world. Later, when I discovered that this is something people laugh on, this is something not to be proud of. I was 17 and I asked myself that will I be a reason of shame for my parents? And unfortunately the answer I discovered was yes. If my parents come to know about it, more than it, if a society comes to know about it, my parents would be laughed on. They will say that they did not raise a good child, a sanskari bachcha. And I didn't want to be the reason of laughter for my parents, and that led me to trying to kill myself at the age of 17. Today I can laugh on it because the tool by which I tried to kill myself was a knife of a Gujarati vegetarian home, and you can hardly cut a potato out of that knife which you can find in a Gujarati vegetarian home. Forget about killing a human being.
Blunt as hell.
But for a 17-year-old Ankit, that phase was really difficult, Rami. And that's why my answer to your question is yes, education system needs to talk about it. Now the other side of the coin. What we see in the Western countries, some of the very liberal, primarily left-leaning states in the United States in particular, is that they are talking about explicit sexual acts with children as young as 2nd grade and 3rd grade. They are talking about anal sex with them. Is this what we want to teach our kids? That is also something inappropriate. So we need to really find a balance in which wherein we can't be in a situation wherein just you don't talk about it anything, so that a 15, 16, 18-year-old Ankit who discovered himself being different, and maybe I think today's children are discovering their sexuality at much younger age than what I discovered because of limited avenues at that time, do not find that they are all alone and they are not accepted, and maybe they push towards mental health crisis or maybe suicide like me, or not to the another extreme wherein you almost giving out a pornographic depiction of sexual act to younger kids. We need to find a balance. And that balance can be different from country to country, society to society, culture to culture, and specialist of those space needs to be accounted. Parents also needs to have the say in what their children are being taught in the school. I'm not saying they have a final authority, but the parents have a right on what their children are being taught. Child psychologist needs to be consideration, and then we need to find a perfect balance. So for India, I always say that at least till 5th and 6th or 7th grade, you don't need to talk about sex, but what kind of stories are we telling them? We are telling them there was a Prince Charming who gone and rescued a princess, and a princess is waiting for another Prince Charming to come. Can we tell a story that there was a Prince Charming who was waiting for another Prince Charming to come, or there was a princess who was rescued by another princess, right? Just a simple story, but giving out and opening their world view that it is not only a man and a woman who makes a couple, a family. It could be a man and a woman and a woman, a child and a grandpa can also make a family, right? So this diversity of family needs to be taught age appropriately using the storytelling as a tool in education system in starting years.
Wonderful. I'm so sorry that you had to go through what you did, because that no child of that age should feel alone enough to go through emotions like that. But coming from that point of isolation to now you organizing parades, events, being a human rights activist, really taking the onus upon yourself to bring out this new worldview. Tell me, how did you come across putting together the parade in Bombay?
So Mumbai Pride Parade is in a collective effort. There are many individuals like me and organizations. We come together and organize Mumbai LGBT Pride Parade. The very first Pride of Mumbai happened in 2009, and ever since we are doing it. Mumbai Pride is quite special in terms of we generally do it immediately after our 26th January National Day, on the weekend after the 26th January, saying that yes, India got its independence, but here is a community who is still striving for their independence. We primarily do it from Azad Maidan, from where Mahatma Gandhi started the Quit India movement. Bharat Chodo movement was started from Azad Maidan, so we generally do it from there, and it's a collective effort. I attended the Mumbai Pride for the first time as a participant in 2009. That was the phase wherein I was questioning myself that am I gay? Am I really gay? Then I saw this ad in the newspaper, a news article, that there was LGBT Pride Parade happening in Mumbai. I took a train myself alone for the first time, Mumbai local, from Dombivli to Matunga, where the Pride was happening in that year. And I decided, okay, let me just go and look at these people from distance, quote unquote, these people. As I reached there, Rami, what I see that there are a bunch of people really happy and celebrating their identity in colorful clothes. And looking at them from a distance helped me to reflect, and this is the answer to many people who ask why pride parades are needed. Pride parades are not just needed for people who are participating. Pride parades are needed for so many Ankits and Ankitas who are watching that pride from a distance. Because looking at that pride, that raised a question in me that I am here who tried to kill myself and failed at it, looking at these people celebrating something on which I wanted to kill myself. And that raised this point in my mind that if I cannot accept and celebrate like them, at least I will not try to kill myself anymore. I will stop that, right? That's why pride is needed. Pride is needed for so many people out there who may not be physically there, but they may be seeing on news channels, on newspaper, that pride means that we as a LGBT community exist in the same society as you and me are living. Only difference is I have a courage to talk about my acceptance and my identity. Somebody might not.
Very well said, Ankit. You know, in your earlier response also you said that, you know, every culture needs to develop, you know, in its own way, or every country needs to develop in its own way, their own identities. You know, this is something that comes from, you know, an idea that all Western frameworks are not apt for frameworks in other countries, you know, and therefore they need to develop their own. But one of the things that I've noticed that we've definitely taken from the West is this idea of intersectionality, you know, wherein we are confusing all these, you know, the other day I was watching a Greta Thunberg speech where she was meant to talk about climate and she was talking about the Israel-Hamas war. You know, we've seen this happen many a times. We've actually seen this happen at the Pride Parade as well. Why do you think there is this sort of politicization of these ideas? Also, is it helpful to the cause to mix these sort of very radical political ideologies for what may seem to be specially there for that cause?
Right. Thank you for asking this question, because I'm sure, Rami, this question might be there in many people's mind. They may accept LGBT people, they say, okay, that's perfectly fine, you are natural, this is how you are born with, it's okay, you talk about it and come to the pride, but then why are you talking about non-queer issues in the queer pride, right? And that is something I want to address. Thank you for asking that question. I feel over-politicization of LGBT movement is an unfortunate thing, not just in India, but around the world. We need to look at the history that why it started. LGBT movement globally was initially dominated and led by left-leaning people, just like any other human rights and liberation movement. Now what happened is when this movement reached India, because the left liberal Western framework of human rights consciousness is, okay, if you are LGBT then you are against church, because church on a face value or a religion on a face value does not accept LGBT people. However, when this framework reached India, it did not hold any more gravitas, because most of the faith in India have at least some space for LGBT identities. They are not on face against it. At least none of the faith says that, hey Ankit, you are gay, you should be stoned to death. Yeah. Nobody tells me that, right? So then they started finding it difficult to hold the community narrative from the political point of view here. However, the left is the most vocal voice in the LGBT community. That doesn't mean they're the only voice. They are most dominant and vocal voice, and they primarily started historically LGBT movements around the world and in India. That led to a lot of diverse political conversation coming in, which was nothing to do with LGBT rights movement, which is an unfortunate truth. And me as an LGBT rights activist have been always talking about and striving that can we declutter the LGBT movement with other socio-political movement. I may be a great champion of Dalit rights, for an example.
Yeah, but would you go for their rally with a flag?
Exactly.
A flag.
Correct. So I was just coming to that, right? Saying that I might be a great champion of animals' rights or environment rights, right? But bringing all that thing together in a queer pride dilutes the queer cause. So I personally feel that if I support Dalit rights, I will go and participate in events specially organized on those causes. If I support environment's rights, I'll participate in the conversation there, which is focused on it, instead of bringing everything here. And why the only this intersectionality is limited to LGBT movement? Right? I mean, where is the intersectionality in other marginalized community? Then they said, oh, you need to be better, then you should be the ahead in terms of human rights, evolve human rights conversation. Look, I do not agree to this term of activist for me, because the term activist generally means somebody who will shout outside the policymaker's office and say that hi ho ho, homophobia got to go. I'm not the person. I'm a person who believes in collaboration and working things out. If you are a policymaker, I will respectfully ask for your time, ask for your appointment, say that Rami, ABCDs are my demand, can we meet at a middle ground and get things done? And I think the social change really gets done in that way, not by standing outside your office and shouting, right? So once in a year, that's beautiful event we do called Pride. I am all for it, as I told you, but I'm more of a person who would like to do the policy change by collaboration and conversation rather than confrontation.
I think again, so well said, and I think that resonates with so many of us who feel that, you know, the details, the changes really come in this sort of background, back-end work, you know. And of course, the Pride Parade has its own place. But let me also to understand this better, because, you know, you've spoken about it in such clear terms, but I still don't understand, does the queer community find more comfort then because of the historicity of it within the left-leaning ideology? Or is there some resonance and common ground with the center-right, let's say?
LGBT community is as diverse as any other community. We have political left, we have extreme political left, we have center left, we have center right, and the extreme right. Or you can find LGBT people everywhere. Some may be out and some may not be out. So whitewashing or rainbow washing the whole community from the same political brush will be immature act to do. The only question is who gets the space, who gets the agency, and whose agency is being projected as a community voice. Unfortunately, these agencies have always been dominated by left-leaning political ideology. However, that is changing, and the world is realizing that queer community is also diverse, and there are non-left people as well. So today, my Twitter account, DMs would be full with kids of 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old who may not be associating themselves with left-leaning ideology, and say that Ankit, looking at you, who is proud Indian, who is proud nationalist, unapologetic Hindu and gay, gives them inspiration. I had no such ideals to look up to when I was growing up. Second thing, why most of the queer community people on face value leans towards the left? It's a very interesting sociological researched topic. In my understanding, what happens is LGBT people are primarily rejected by society and family. So the only space in which they are accepted is the community itself. Now imagine me being a 16-year-old who is questioning myself, yet not sure. What is happening to me? Why am I different? And in that mindset, I reach to a community space, community event, right? And they accept me. And I am, end of the day, is looking for just an acceptance, somebody to tell me, Ankit, there is nothing wrong with you. You are okay, right? That lines are given to me by only the community space. And the dominant voice in that community events, that community space is left, right? So tomorrow, if they say that, hey, CAE is wrong, NRC is wrong, abrogation of Article 370 is absolute violation of human rights for the Kashmir, I also have to toe their line because these are the only people who are accepting me. I don't have a political maturity to make my own judgments, but these are the people who are accepting me, giving me space, giving me recognition. So what other things they are saying must be true. So I either by conscious or unconsciously start believing in that, and then my political mold frames towards it. And that's why you will see most political voices within the LGBT community comes out of left leaning.
Well, that seems like a reasonable enough explanation. But does that then mean that the center right needs to take more onus?
Absolutely. And that's why the conversations like which we are having, that's why the conversation done by India Foundation is important, right? That although it has been claimed that LGBT community is left dominated, we can change that. We can say that we are diverse and inclusive. That is the voice we are talking about as a LGBT community, on top of our lung, that let's talk about diversity, equity and inclusion. Why can't we talk about political diversity with it? And that's why the spaces like this is much more important.
You also have this organization, right, which has the word Hindu in it. And also the Indian community, the gay community is starting to come out in more and more in focus. Could you tell me if the Indian community has, the Indian gay community has a specific, special signature that makes it different from other queer communities around the world? And also how your organization fits into it, because clearly being Hindu is a key component of your organization.
So the Indic approach towards life, primarily I feel, essentially the Indian society's ethos is of diversity. So we will accept diversity, it is in our DNA, because we don't have the book to follow, the messenger to abide by, the commandments which restricts our living, right? We have so much of diversity. This diversity of ours is our very unique USP, and that's why we will see that in Indic societies there is so much of space for LGBT identities. So I talk about diversity of Hinduism, the concept of Karuna in Buddhism, the concept of equality in Sikhism, and concept of Anekantavad in Jainism. All the four major religions born out of this part of the world have some space towards little bit more than what I believe my worldview to be, right? And because of this core DNA of diversity, equity and inclusion, there is a space for LGBT people like me to exist. And that space gave a rise to an organization called Queer Hindu Alliance. So the Queer Hindu Alliance is essentially in a support group which connects the dots between LGBT rights and Hinduism. We don't claim that we have absolute truth of Hinduism, but what we say is that it is okay to be queer and Hindu, it is okay in extension to be queer and Indic, it is okay to be queer and Jain, Sikh, Buddhist. That is, these are the agencies we can primarily talk about, but also it is okay to be queer and religious person. You don't need to be anti-religion like in the West to be LGBT activist or be a LGBT community member. So Rami, this space of diversity gives the space for an organization like Queer Hindu Alliance to exist. So what does Queer Hindu Alliance do? Primarily three things. The first is that we connect the dots between LGBT identity and Hinduism from a point of view that if any queer person and their family members are looking for answers, that it is okay to be queer and Hindu, we help them the support and resources they require. Second is that as the LGBT movement progresses in India, this diverse sectional identity, intersectional identity comes, right? There are organizations which talks about Dalits and being queer. There is a Queer Muslim project which talks about being Muslim and queer. There is a Christ for Queers for Christ, right? Which are wonderful. I celebrate and welcome all these organizations. The same way, then there needs to be a space for a voice of a queer Hindu, and that's why Queer Hindu Alliance. And a third is what we do is some of the Seva projects in the need of a crisis. So during COVID time, we directly did money transfer to the community members who were looking for support, not just Hindus, but any LGBT member around the country who were looking for help for their survival. And all, we did direct money transfer to their account. or during the Yamuna floods, we supported many queer members in Delhi, NCR, Vrindavan and Mathura area with direct money transfer and things like that. So these are the Seva projects we do in the time of a crisis. So these are the primarily 3 reasons Queer Hindu Alliance is functioning.
Wonderful to know the kind of work that you're doing. But we're running short on time, and I yet have so many questions to ask you. So let me quickly ask you these questions. Last question on this, this work of yours. Do you still get hate because you're openly Hindu and you're queer?
I think hate is universal, just like love. No matter what you do, if you identify yourself with any identity, hate is a byproduct of it. So, yes, I get hate for proudly talking about my faith. I get hate for proudly talking about my nation. I get hate for proudly talking about my sexuality. And I think that's perfectly fine because if I want to be part of the social movement and a voice within the social movement, these are the byproducts of it and I need to be fine with it. Is the hate a little bit more towards me because I proudly talk about my patriotism and my religion? Yes, there is. But I think that somebody needed to talk about it. And whoever did that first was bound to get that. I'm proud that I am the divine Lord Krishna has made me the instrument, Nimitt Matra, to be that voice, because if today I am getting that hate, tomorrow somebody else using this identity and doing the advocacy will get little less hate. And I'm glad to be part of that continuous process and journey.
Okay, finally, tell me, I want to get your input on the recent legislation against same-sex marriage and adoption laws. What is your take on it? Why do you think it is important, I assume? And what do you think are the other areas that, the community, the society needs to start focusing on?
Some kind of recognition of same-gender partners is essential. I really don't care you call it marriage, you call it civil partnership or you call it Timbuktu. The word doesn't matter. As far as it gives us the civil rights which comes with the institution called as marriage. Today, if I am unconscious, I am living with my partner, unconscious because of some kind of medical situation and I am hospitalized, my partner will be asked to leave if my family objects him being there. Who will take the call of pulling off the plug? These are the critical questions we need to address. If I pass away without making a will, my whole property will by default go to my blood relatives, but will not go to the person with whom I would have spent 30-40 years of my life. Which ideally, even a husband dies without making a will, the property goes to wife and vice versa. Which may not be there in our case. We can't have joint bank account, we can't have a joint insurance, right? These are the civil rights which comes with the institution called as marriage, which we do not have. And that's why some kind of legal recognition of partnership between two same gender is important. Very quickly on the adoption rights, I feel completely capable enough to give a loving and protective environment for another child to grow and find their own full potential. A child in an orphan age compared to child in a loving, protective environment of home is much more better, I feel. So that's why I personally feel on a face value that adoption rights are important. However, there needs to be a proper mechanism in place that the child is not abused. But just the way a child could be abused, an adopted child could be abused in heterosexual marriage, in a single parenthood, the same way it could be he or she or they could be abused in the gay couple's home as well. So it is the legislation and the state need to ensure that there are legislation and rules and regulations in place to control and prevent from that for happening. But just because that could happen, you cannot stop a child's, first of all, a right of a two individual to raise another child and a child's right to find their full potential in protective, safe environment of a home where they can call somebody their parents.
then the counter arguments to these?
So counter arguments are primarily two. One is what will child think when they grow up? Have we taken child's consent in it? Because child is not at the age to give you the consent. Will that have a negative impact on child psychology? That is one argument. And second, about the child abuse. So child abuse I already addressed, that there needs to be a proper grievance and mechanism in place by which you could address the child abuse question. Now to talk about the child psychology, there are now children who are 18 and plus who were adopted when they were young by queer parents in the Western countries, right? And there are research papers by many institutions, by interviewing them, that did you find any kind of discrimination? Did you find it less enough than your other friends in the school who had a mother and a father at home, right? So compare to the situation wherein they had no parent, to comparing it to having a parent, whether it's the same gender couple, they say that it is much better, right? They find it loving, accepting home in which they really loved their parents just the way their friends were loving their parents, and it was vice versa, their parents loved the child as well. There tends to be more conversation, more dialogue in these regards, keeping in mind that we take as stakeholders like child psychologists into the account, children who grew up with the queer parents in the Western countries where they have lived their life and have become adults now, into account all this. Adoption cannot be looked only from a prism of rights, but adoption also need to be looked at from a point of view of a responsibility. You know, when we talk about marriage or civil partnership, I can keep on my activist hat on because it's only about two consulting adults. But when I talk about adoption, I need to take off my activist hat a little bit side, because it is not just about rights, but it is about responsibility of a third life who is not a consulting adult.
Thank you, Ankit, for that, very concise way of explaining to us the pros and cons of the arguments around this debate. But let me finally ask you, if there was one thing that you could change in the queer rights discourse, what would it be?
If there could be one thing which I could change in the queer rights discourse, it would be that we are as diverse as just any other society. I really wish the community, the LGBT community, who shouts on their lung about diversity, equity and inclusion, will also respect the diversity, equity, inclusion within the community as well.
Well, what a great way to end this interview on that note. Thank you, Ankit, for taking the time out and being here. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rami, for having me. It's wonderful having a conversation with you. Namaste and Jai Hind.
Thank you.